Like, how did you get onto this diet? Let's start with that.
The reason I started eating this way was actually sort of as a rebellion when I was a teenager, because I had been very short and skinny, and I tried everything to gain weight, to get bigger. And at that time, everyone was telling me that you need to eat, more complex carbohydrates, more bread. Don't eat too much meat because it has too much fat. Don't eat too many eggs. And the problem was, as a kid, I was one of the few kids that didn't like sweets at all. I don't like cookies, candy, any of those things. What my favorite food always was meat, especially beef. So about 1983, I broke my arm trying to help my dad put up a carport, and I got stuck at home. My parents worked. It's like a lot of the kids in the 80s, we sort of fend for ourselves. So I thought to myself, well, I got the refrigerator and I'm not really good at cooking, but I could make a hamburger. And that's when I started eating that way. It was summer of 1983.
And do you have a diverse range of meat you eat, or do you typically go for the same things?
Well, it depends. The foundation of my diet has always been beef. If I can get good cuts of beef, that's great. If not, I have to eat ground beef. But I also do like chicken. I love duck, but the problem is I fall in love with my ducks, so sometimes it's hard to cook them. And iguana is another meat that I like because they are somewhat invasive here, and when I can get one, I will cook it. Fish, when I lived in the Keys, I ate a lot of fish. If I have it, I'll eat it. But the meat does vary, but beef is the foundation of my diet.
Okay. Annabelle, do you have some questions?
Yeah, so I'm interested in what happens to the human body when you eat so clean for so long. So am I correct in understanding that for the last 40 or so years, you have not touched grains or vegetable oils, processed sugar, anything like that at all?
Well, actually, it's been 39 years. And in 1993, I did a vegetarian experiment.
Oh, wow.
I was scared by some people I knew, because we had Hurricane Andrew in 92. And there was so much meat available because I was the only one that had electricity, because I had set up a generator, and people that we knew, they were throwing their food away. So they were giving us, beef and poultry and fish and everything. So I stocked up on so much meat, and I ate nothing but meat from the time of the hurricane all the way to the end of 92. But I was told by several people that if I kept eating meat, I was going to get colon cancer, and I was going to have all kinds of these problems, which I'd never heard of. So I knew several people who were vegetarian, and I made an agreement. They told me, why don't you try a vegetarian diet and see how you feel, and see if you get better. And that's what I did. Starting after New Year's 1993, I went vegetarian. It wasn't vegan. I still ate eggs and some fish, but it was mostly vegetable based. But on the good side, I never really used seed oils, because even as a kid, when they used to give us margarine or stuff was cooked in vegetable oil, I get diarrhea. And I used to get a lot of headaches if I ate anything that had like soybean oil or anything like that. So I avoided that. So basically, I've avoided the seed oils since I started, but I did go vegetarian for a short period of time.
So I'm interested now, what did you feel during your time being vegetarian? Because it must have been a huge contrast, especially from having such a clean diet of eating meat to then go and be vegetarian. That must have been a huge shock for the body. And, by that time, if your system is so kind of, I don't know if clean is the right word, but I guess, you don't have anything processed going on. It should be very low levels of inflammation at that point. You must have really felt something then.
Well, actually, when I first started the vegetarian way of eating, I felt fine. And believe it or not, I actually had more energy for a period of time. But then what I noticed after a month, I just wasn't as strong. I'm skinny, but I'm quite strong. But my strength was decreasing. And then I was thinking, well, it's because I was starting to eat this curd with tofu or whatever that was, which I absolutely detested. I just couldn't stand it. But eating that, I don't feel good. Then after a couple, maybe around March of that year, I started getting I had to go to the bathroom more. You have to go when you got to go, you really got to go. Because now if I got to go to the bathroom, I can wait 2 hours, whatever. It's not urgent. But when you're eating a lot of vegetables, it gets to the point where you have to go. And if I'm working, there's not a bathroom around, I got to look for one. It turns into a real problem. But other than that, I mean, it wasn't bad. I wasn't eating a highly processed diet. It was mostly whole vegetables, but I did get talked into eating the bread, which I don't like bread, eating the whole grain bread. And that really started to get to me. I started getting diarrhea once in a while, and then gas. I never really had a gas problem. It was quite embarrassing, but I never really attributed it to the vegetables. They did tell me, well, it takes time for your bacteria to adjust and you'll get used to it. And the worst thing I ever tried was beans. That is just death for me. I cannot eat legumes of any kind. I get super sick.
Well, legumes are highly toxic anyway, so I'm not surprised that you reacted to those. And then, would you mind telling me when you went back, so what made you firstly go back to eating meat again? And then second of all, how did you actually feel afterwards when you went back to eating meat?
Well, the reason that I went back to meat is because in July of '93, I picked up a flu. And I usually get sick pretty much every summer because of the hot weather here. But it's usually a minor thing, a cold, maybe a little allergy, whatever. And I got this flu, and my parents got it too. And we were all living in the same place at the time. And we were knocked out for days. I had never been so sick in my life. And it was just, I couldn't eat anything, didn't even want to think about food. So it had to be at least 4 or 5 days that I couldn't eat. And I was just pretty much in bed with terrible headaches and dizziness. And when I started to feel better, I started thinking about food. The first thing I wanted to eat was ground beef. So that's what I was thinking about. We had no food in the house because no one had gone to the store for days. So I thought I got to find something to eat. And when I walked outside, the first thing I found was a nest of duck eggs. So I took those duck eggs and I made myself an omelet and ate that. And it was really good. And I thought, well, I got the strength. I'm going to go to the store. I head down to the Winn-Dixie, and the first thing I did was get a bunch of ground beef for 99 cents a pound and cook that up. And that's what I was eating. And within that same day, my appetite started coming back. And I told my parents, I told my friends, the vegetarian experiment is over. I'm not going to do this again.
Do you have any health problems to speak of?
Well, the bad thing is I haven't been to a doctor since 1996. The last time I went to a doctor it was a checkup because I was changing health plans. And the doctor that I talked to, who, by the way, was overweight, told me that my cholesterol was too high and I need to do something about it. And I got kind of afraid at the moment. I thought, well, what should I do? Well, what do you eat? Oh, you eat meat. Oh, you shouldn't eat all that saturated fat. I said, well, if I'm eating so much saturated fat and it's so bad, why am I not heavy like you? And of course, he got upset at me. I said, look, this is what I don't want to deal with. I'm not going to a doctor again. I'm sorry. I'm done with this. And that's it. But health-wise, I mean, from what I can see, I do check my blood pressure on a regular basis, and it ranges anywhere from 90/60 to 120/70 at rest. That seems okay. I have a lot of energy. I really haven't had that many digestive problems, except a few times I've gone to a restaurant, like on a dinner, and then maybe a couple hours, 3 hours later, I'll get sick. Once in a while, I've been convinced to eat something like pizza, which is just, that is one of the worst things I could eat. That's a 3-hour diarrhea express. If I eat a conventional pizza, it's terrible. I might be able to eat 1 or 2 slices, but so really when it comes to digestive difficulty, it really comes down to what I eat. If I eat my normal diet, I don't have a problem unless I get the flu. Like I got COVID in 2020, 21, and I got it also this year. I've had COVID 3 times, and I got the aches and pains. I got some gas and diarrhea. That's the only time I have a problem. Health-wise, I work outside. I do a lot of physical work. I'm always moving things back and forth. I don't get tired, and I really don't get hungry. That's the other funny thing. I can go. I don't even think about food, or other people I know are constantly snacking. So, but it's hard to know on a medical level if I'm really that healthy, but the way I feel is outstanding.
And how old are you, Rick, if you don't mind me asking?
I'm 54.
54. Okay. And have you always been sort of thin and fit, or have you ever had any?
I have a picture of me somewhere. Let me see if I can find it. Oh, here's a picture of me from 1983.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
I mean, like, for 54, I mean, yeah, that's amazing. So you've never had any weight, you've never had any sort of weight issue, nothing like that. Okay.
I've weighed the same since I was 25.
Yeah.
Do
Okay.
you attribute that to your diet then?
It has to be part of it because everybody I know that's my age has gained weight and is on at least one prescription medication.
Sorry, guys, we lost Rick there for a moment there. So, Rick, as I was saying before, you've blown up on the internet. Carnivore Camaraderie had an interview of you. Were you a little bit surprised by the sort of the feedback and the sort of the newfound fame that you've had with this diet, or how do you feel about it?
I'm very surprised because this is the last thing I ever thought would be important. When I had my YouTube channel earlier, it was more about alternative energy and antique cars and stuff like that, thus the name. But I've never really thought my diet would appeal to anybody. The only reason I've gotten interested in it is when we had the COVID lockdown, I spent more time on the internet and I started looking at videos and I started seeing people talking about this keto diet, carnivore diet. I go, wait a minute, that's the way that I eat, and I've tried to contact some of them, but a lot of these influencers, they seem to be in it for the money. I mean, for example, you have that wacky doctor, what's his name, that eats fruit now.
Oh yeah, Saladino.
Paul Saladino. Okay, I tried to contact him, no luck there. And then you have the other one that I like, which is Sean Baker. But he seems to be, I mean, he came to Miami once, but he wouldn't contact anyone. So I figured, it's somebody else, making money off of this. And the first one that actually contacted me was Joey. He says, I'd like to interview you. Really? Okay. Yeah, I can do that.
Yeah, Joey's a good kid, and he actually contacted me like when he was just starting his channel. And I was like, who is this guy? He's 18 years old. And I guess I kind of like, when I hear about somebody that young, I just, I might sort of discount them a little bit, but I was just blown away by his intelligence and just his wanting to learn about all this stuff, right? But it's kind of fascinating, isn't it? To like, I imagine this is probably fascinating to you that, you just have a very simple, ancestrally appropriate diet that people ate naturally, right? They ate in season. They ate mostly meat with some vegetables and fruit in season. So do you find it a little bit strange that this is like such a crazy thing to people for people to hear about this diet of yours?
I've always found it strange because every time that I've gone to eat with someone else, they show me all these things I've never even heard of. It's like going to the supermarket. I was taking care of my parents when they were sick, and my mom would give me a detailed list of things to buy in the supermarket. When I go in the supermarket, it's just go to the back of the store, get the meat, and leave. I can be in and out of the supermarket in 3 to 5 minutes. It takes longer to check out than to get the food. But people I know, they go and they buy all these different things. And, and then someone had told me, said, well, Rick, do you ever go in anywhere in the store except in the back? No, that's where the meat is. So it just seems unusual to me that some people would get so interested in things that just didn't seem to be that important.
Yeah, it is pretty strange. I've noticed, when I go to restaurants, my friends always comment on it. I'll order a steak and leave everything else on the plate. It's also the same with my daughter. Even yesterday, I took my daughter to a daycare event here in Florida. And, all the parents, they had the goldfish and stuff like that. And, I'll give my daughter, just something like some steak and maybe a bit of fruit, maybe some berries or something like that. And the parents will, a lot of times parents will comment on it, like, oh, that, she likes steak. That's interesting. Right. And all the other kids have their granola bars. And so it's kind of strange how things have been flipped upside down, in terms of like what is commonplace. And it's kind of shown how much of a social disease our diet is. Right.
Yeah, it's like when I was a kid, that was one thing that was popular. When my parents would bag me a lunch, the first thing they would give me is that horrible peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And I absolutely detest jelly. So I would give that to the ducks over there by the school. Then they gave me granola bar, which I also hated. And I gave that to the ducks. Finally, my mom said, well, we'll give them a bologna sandwich. So I would eat the bologna and the cheese and give the rest to the ducks. You know, it's just when I was a kid, it was difficult. They'd give you a treat like candy or whatever. I put it in my pocket. It'd end up in the washing machine, and my mom would be mad at me because it went all over the place. It took them time to figure out that I was the one kid that just didn't like any of those snacks. And I see people that I work with, you know, they have bags of snacks. They'll put it in their truck, or they will. It's just constant. When I taught at the college even, and we had some type of get together or meal, they always have the stupid donuts and the, you know, what do they call them? Croissants or whatever, the little wrapped up things. I mean, all this crap. And then sometimes they'd have spaghetti and meatballs, and I would take a fork and pick out all the meatballs and leave the spaghetti.
So, Rick, I have a question for you. Okay. How did you get into all this? Now, obviously, being in this community, we're all a little bit different. And have relayed this to me that you see yourself as a little bit different from the average person. So maybe you could sort of take us back into how this all came about, and why are you sitting with us today talking about your diet?
Well, that's a very good question. And I can tell you from the way I remember it, when I was younger, you know, like most kids, they tell you that if you follow directions, you do what you're told, you're going to get a result. So they tell you to do this or that, and then you're going to get this. But my experience was that no matter what they told me, no matter how hard I tried, there was no way that I could fall into the same way of thinking or do like everybody else, because no matter what I did, I was always the one that got picked last. And whatever I did, it just didn't seem to work. So I said, you know what? Screw it. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do it my own way, because what they're telling me just doesn't make sense. If it's not working, why would I do the same thing over and over again? It's ridiculous. I thought, all right. So I went ahead. I decided, let me try something different. And that seemed to work for me, because then I didn't care anymore about what people think. You know, oh, you know, you're the little one, they make fun of you, whatever. I don't care. I'm going to balance it. I'm going to say, okay, if I do this, I get this. At least that way, I get a better understanding of cause and effect. And that, since then, that's the way I run everything in my life. Before I do anything, I try to do the research I can, see, you know, if I do this, what will happen over here? And then in the end, if it doesn't work, I'll make adjustments. So I can keep adjusting it until I achieve the proper balance, and then everything's good.
And, you know, now that you've kind of blown up in this whole world, as I asked you earlier, you know, you're saying that, you know, some of the influencers that you reached out to really had no interest in speaking to you, or they just didn't get back to you. I could assume now that you'll probably have a lot of people reaching out to you. So, I mean, how do you feel about that?
You know what? I had a feeling that would happen. And that seems to be the way it normally is. I was always ignored by people, no matter what business I was in, until they started seeing the results. Then all of a sudden, there's this big interest. You know, what is he doing? Who is this person? And I welcome that. I welcome, you know, anyone they want to talk. I don't even mind if the vegans want to talk to me. I've argued with many of them in my lifetime, and I've even been threatened about how terrible I am. But it'll be interesting to see some of these more popular influencers, and I can think of a handful of them that would want to contact me. And like I said, I welcome it.
Awesome. Thank you, Rick. Oh, sorry, Annabelle, you had something to say?
Do you have any words of advice for people who are, I guess, you know, maybe Joey's age or younger than me? So, you know, school, university, who might be a little bit lost, because I've heard that, you know, the generations above me keep saying that things are only getting worse and worse. And I believe that, and I can see that, you know, the way that we're living, it doesn't feel normal anymore. And it feels like humanity is disappearing along with nature. So do you have any words of wisdom for people, and, you know, I guess ways of protecting themselves or getting back in touch with themselves, because you're so in touch with yourself?
I think the most important thing is don't judge yourself by the actions of others if you can avoid it. You need to look at more more information to see if you're on the right or wrong path. Short-term thinking is the way that the world is designed right now. We live in a debt-based society where people make business decisions based on the performance of the next quarter. But you have to look at the long term. If you don't look at the long term, you're going to end up with some very unexpected and unpleasant surprises. It's like living here in Florida. We deal with hurricane season. So we always want to prepare way ahead of time. And 99% of the time, nothing happens. But when something bad happens, then you're better prepared. And you need to network with the right people. If you surround yourself with people that are constantly against you, it's going to be an unnecessary struggle. But if you can meet other people that are at least willing to see the world in alternative ways, you can end up with some really good results. And a lot of times what I've noticed about people is that the war starts right here. They don't have control of their own thoughts and the way that they look at the world. So they're strung along by whatever trend comes, and they follow that. Sometimes if you decide to go your own way, you may not get the results you want at first. So you may have to, like I said before, make those adjustments. But really, I don't think the world is getting worse per se. And I know a lot of people write off the younger generation. I'm the opposite. I think that the younger generation is actually a lot more valuable than we think, because young people, well, assuming they take care of themselves, of course, they have the ability to make changes a lot easier than someone who's older and set in their ways. And I know a lot of people that I deal with, I try to encourage them to make minor changes. For example, don't go into debt unless you absolutely have to. I tell them don't go into debt unless it's something that's going to make you money. You may have to cut back on a few things, not spend as much. Don't buy the latest designer clothes. Don't buy a new car. Try to restrict some of the obligations that you have, and then concentrate on yourself. Try to build yourself from within. We need to do the same thing with the world. We need to concentrate on our energy, our food source, and that will help us with the environment instead of this short-term thinking where you constantly exploit whatever you can right now, and then you worry about the problems later.
So Rick, 40 years almost, he's 39 years of being mostly a carnivore. Do you have any plans on changing anything up or trying new things, or are you just going to keep maintaining the course?
Well, what I would like to change the source of my meat. Like I said, eventually I would like to be in a more rural area where I can get more local meats. Hopefully I'll be able to just buy a whole cow and slaughter it myself and put the meat away. That's about the only change. I think my lifestyle as it is right now is working for me. All I want to do is just find a better location and maybe additional people to network with, so that it'll sort of, it's like a symbiotic relationship. It'll benefit everyone.